All right, thank you for staying with us. We will now link up with Eshoma Moimodu and TJ Suadeye in our Abuja studio to continue the conversation on the show. Good morning, guys. I'm handing it over to you now.
Good morning, Veronica. Happy New Week.
Good morning, Veronica, and Happy New Week. This is the Holy Week. And leading to the Holy Week, we have the Good Friday, and eventually we'll have the Easter Sunday.
Well, I hope you will be good. But beyond the festivities, I would say the most important thing is to look at the reason behind the season. What is the message? I believe it preaches love, sacrifice, and Nigerians should, look at this and imbibe it in their everyday life. I think that should be the major focus.
That key word is the sacrifice.
Yes,
sacrifice.
Love and sacrifice.
Exactly. Now, let's give you what we have on the table this morning. And good morning, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the program. Now, we are live from our Abuja studio, and this is TVC Breakfast Show. Now, this Monday morning, we begin with a developing story from the global trade arena where the U.S. President Donald Trump is renewing calls for steep tariffs on Chinese and other foreign goods, a move that could reshape global trade flows once again. President Trump is doubling down on trade tariffs as a key policy for his 2024 campaign. President Trump is proposing a universal baseline tariff on all foreign imports and significantly higher duties on Chinese-made products. However, in the wake of the global economic shifts, Nigeria has ramped up economic reforms, from removal of fuel subsidies to the unification of the exchange rates. The government is repositioning Nigeria for global competitiveness. Now, the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council has been working to cut bureaucratic red tape, improve ease of doing business, and attract foreign direct investment. From the Lekki Free Trade Zone to the Made in Nigeria vehicle assembly lines, Nigeria's industrial push is gathering momentum.
The Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has prioritized local manufacturing, agro-processing and tech-driven industry sectors, especially expected to generate jobs and reduce over-reliance on imports. But experts say long-term success depends on stable policies, access to credit for small industries, and regional trade integration. With the right mix of reforms, resilience, and strategy, Nigeria could emerge not just as a participant, but as a key player in the next phase of industrial globalization. Let's now look at how Nigeria is responding through deepening economic reforms and what this means for our national drive towards industrialization. And to help us with deeper analysis into the issues, we have the Deputy Whip of the Senate, Senator Oyekachi Nwebonyi, and also Professor Nanyalu Yelugu Ike Monso, who is the Director General and CEO of Raw Material Research and Development Council. Gentlemen, it's good to have you in our studio this morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
It's good
having us.
Thank you. Well, I'll begin with you, DG. You've seen the Trump tariffs and you know how other countries are reacting to this. But for Nigeria, do you think the country is strong enough to withstand, the ripple effects of this Trump tariffs? And what industries or sectors do you think will feel the biggest impacts?
Well, it's a global punishment in some sense, but of course, again, it's also a very strong expression of self-interest for the United States and a call to other countries to do the same. Nigeria has many ways it can respond, and it can also respond very successfully because the effects on the main is likely on oil, which is also not, it's likely on oil because America doesn't import much of our other non-oil products. So there are less than 10% of what we export to the United States. The indirect impact would be through China, because again, the tariff, the imposition on China is about 145%, which might weaken China's ability to trade with us and to trade with other countries. Most of our export and import trade, in fact, for the whole of Africa, is shifting towards China. Now, can we respond? Yes, of course, we can respond. And I guess that's why my distinguished senator and myself is here. The bill on exporting raw materials without value addition, with a minimum of 30% value addition, can be a very strong response to this. Because it's almost like saying, we protect our own economy. That's America saying this. And then for us, Nigeria, and indeed the rest of Africa, saying, we also have to do something in our own best interest.
Okay. Distinguished, let me come to you with this. He just talked about the bill you're proposing.
Yes.
Now, is it that before this bill, the amendments you're seeking, what was the state of things when talking about doing business in Africa and other global entities? Is it that we don't have enough legislations in place that can help us in playing an active role in the global trade?
Well, it's not correct to say that we don't have enough laws regulating our international businesses as a nation. We have, but from time to time, you review your laws vis-a-vis your interests in the cost of transaction. One thing is very clear. In Nigeria, we make good laws. Another thing is obeying those laws. Also, we are blessed. In Africa, Nigeria has the largest deposit of raw materials in Africa. No doubt about that. But the problem is, how do we tailor our laws for us to have full utilization of these raw materials? Now, for example, in Nigeria, we have gold, we have lead, name them. But most unfortunately, all these raw materials are exported at this crudest form outside Nigeria, without any form of processing it here. Imagine if we have a good processing factory in a place like Zamfara, where we have large deposit of gold. Could you imagine the number of Nigerian youth that will be employed there? The revenue to government, our economy will be diversified. Could you imagine having a lead processing industry in a Ebonyi state? Imagine what type of development it will bring to the locality, the value to add to our economy as a nation. But regrettably, like I said earlier, all these things are not happening because our laws are weak in this respect. And that is why I've come up with this bill to amend the Raw Material Act of 2022 to make it mandatory that all these raw materials cannot just be exported at this crudest form outside Nigeria. We must insist that we develop our own industries here to process these raw materials. By doing so, we create jobs for our teeming unemployed youths. By doing so, we generate more revenue to government. By doing so, we diversify our economy. So that is what we are talking about. And that is what the bill is seeking to cure.
Well, Senator, your bill suggests that at least 30% of raw materials should be processed before exports. But many would say the real challenge is capacity. Do we have the factory, the equipment, and skilled labor to support this? And what specific steps are being taken to boost capacity on ground?
Well, a journey of 100 miles will start with a step. We are aware of all these things. When we debated this bill, some senators raised this issue that you just raised now. But like I said, a journey of 100 miles will start with a step. Let's put the law in place. Government has a role to play by putting some of these facilities in place. Do you understand? And also by creating credit, for some of the companies to actually take off. And we're also going to have some time lag within which the law will come into effect so that all these facilities, will be in place. And I'm very sure, because in the course of my interaction last time with the DG and, of course, the Minister of Science and Technology, they are very much ready to cooperate in this respect because it's going to bring a complete turnaround, to our economy as a nation. Okay,
DG, let me come to you with this. 30% definitely is a huge leap. And the Senator has just talked about...
Lots to start with.
Yeah, I understand. He's just talking about there will be a time lag. I remember also, I think during the Obasanjo, Jonathan regime, we had this, was it 5% cassava initiative and all that. We didn't even achieve it, just 5%. Now, we're talking about growing to 30. What I'm saying is the willpower of government or government agencies. How much will this bill ensure sanctions for those who flout? Because before you now know, there will be waivers, and once you start having waivers come in, you're going to abuse it. So would all these things be considered in this bill so that we don't have the political players destroy everything?
Well, of course, they're all in consideration. In drafting bill, the senator will talk more about the bill drafted because they draft the bill. But they are all inclusive. You can't enforce this bill without also without minimizing the loopholes for the abuse of its implementation. Yes, waivers are most likely going to be very minimal because it is very clear you have to add value to these raw materials up to 30%. Now, they will vary from raw material to raw material depending on end market expectations. There are some markets out there that will require that the only way they can buy this is if they're in particular form. So you consider at least 30% of the value expectation and add to it before sending that out. It is, I don't know how to explain it, that since independence, we have our cassava and we export it that way. We have our mangoes and we just ship it out that way. So from extraction to export, there's no stop. You have very little stop. It should be extraction, some measure of value addition, some significant measure of value addition, and to export. Kenya has at least 53% value addition to its raw materials. South Africa, I think significantly higher, about 65 or so. Then you don't talk about countries outside of Africa. You can't develop, you can't prosper, you cannot be like any country that you call developed without intentionally adding value to the raw materials, the resources that God has given to you. It's not possible. So yes, of course, we are going to do everything possible because the implementation also is considerably going to be with the council. And we are going to do everything to ensure that, yes, those likely frontiers of abuses are minimized.
All right, DG, now that we've started seeing some progress with recent policy reforms, especially with the Fitch rating scoring Nigeria a B from a B-, what new targets should the government be aiming for at this time?
Well, I think one has to praise the government, particularly the president, for the reforms, the environment, for all that's going on. It will be tough, slightly, but I think a lot of progress, and one can see the direction very clearly. From my own small point of view, from my own small perspective, I think the boldest move that this government can make is to get this bill assented to. That's what is going to alter the conditions of unemployment, income, anything, all those parameters for prosperity. That's what we're going to change it. So regardless of what we're doing in all other frontiers, this bill is the most important, the single most important lever to alter the condition, for the condition of a typical Nigerian.
Okay, Senator, let's quickly look at this other aspect. I was doing a study and I realized that we have one principal thing that inhibits a lot of things, talking about resource control. Our crave and love for oil money has left a lot of people from even developing what they have natural ability to do. Now, this is also a way to generate even the IGR of various states if they embrace it. But because the oil money is there, and we're not talking about resource control. Now you're talking about this bill. How will the man, for instance, in Borno, in Sokoto, be encouraged to grow his livestock, be encouraged to grow his agriculture, when he knows that there is cheap oil money coming in? Nobody's talking about resource control. So are we placing those things side by side in the National Assembly to look at how we can critically look at this?
Yeah, before now, I'm one of those people in government that have been advocating for people to do something with their hands. because for us to grow as a nation, government has a role to play. Us as citizens also have our own roles to play. And the duty of government is to put in place the basic infrastructure and possibly credits, for small businesses to thrive. Agriculture, outside oil, agriculture is another way to look into. I know very well that in the early 60s, before I was born, history made me to know that we gained the name, the giant of Africa, not through oil, but through agriculture. But upon discovery of oil in the early 70s and 80s, we abandoned and jettisoned completely agricultural activities, thereby making our morale towards agriculture very low. So now it is time for everybody, for all hands to be on deck, while we also call on government to make available some incentives that will actually encourage citizens, not just to depend on oil, but to also go back to what we are known for, which is agriculture. And in that direction, I must commend the federal government because recently the president, through the Minister of Agriculture, is actually doing well. You can see the creation of a livestock department or ministry is a welcome development, which I believe will kind of do an overhauling in that sector, vis-a-vis the problems I've been having between farmers and herders, which have claimed so many lives and have also, caused a kind of a drastic drop in our livestock production as a nation. So I believe that Mr. President has taken some steps, and outside that, he has also been giving some incentives and inputs, to farmers. Many of these things are being distributed through our constituency. Like next week now, I will be engaging over 2,000 farmers in my constituency to give them farm inputs ranging from rice seedlings, to fertilizers and herbicides, all geared towards, creating more opportunities for Nigerians to help themselves, which, as a matter of fact, will accumulate into our economic prosperity as a nation.
All right, we'll continue this conversation, but that will be right after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We have more for you after this break. Stay with us. Have you back? It's still TVC Breakfast, and we're live from our Abuja studio. We're still discussing deepening reforms for industrialization in Nigeria, and we still have with us the Deputy Whip of the Senate, Senator Okekachi Nweboyi, and also the DG CEO of Raw Materials and Research Council, Nanye Ikemunso. Now, Senator, I would like to know, many rural communities with mineral deposits are now targets for violence and exploitation. How does your bill help to protect people living in these areas and their livelihoods?
Well, it is also part of our duty as Parliament to advocate more on this, but it is also the responsibility of all, particularly stakeholders in this respect, the local government chairman, community leaders, and of course state governors, to actually talk to our people and let them understand what they are doing to themselves. Because in most cases, community leaders will abandon the issue and to be fighting for peanuts. Because what they are after is mere royalties coming to them, which is nothing to write home about. So instead of them to insist that the right thing should be done, they will be fighting over peanuts, and in most cases they compromise the environmental impact of even in the cost of exploiting all these raw materials. Because I've seen in some areas so many lives have been lost, so many communities have been deserted as a result of the impact of the mining in those areas. But if we should do the proper thing, before any mining can take place in our community, we should study the environmental impact assessment. We should know the interests of the community. But above all, is that some of these companies should come to establish the processing factory within those communities. That is what we're talking about. Not just to come and exploit the raw materials and get away with it and give them peanut by way of royalties. By the grace of God, tomorrow I'll be going to Jos to interact with some stakeholders in raw material sector. I'm going to take this campaign there. We should tell ourselves the truth. We should call a spade a spade. Let's stop all these blame games, because in most cases we pour all the blames on government, whereas as citizens we fail to do what we're supposed to do. But I must tell you, many of our people don't know what they're supposed to do. And I believe that this bill will be an eye-opener for us to insist that if a company is coming to get lead from our community, for example, we must add in the agreement that you have to build lead processing company in our community, so that as you are getting the lead, you are processing the lead, our people will be employed, development will come, will have value to our economy. That is what we are talking about.
But that is the responsibility of government. It's the community are not there when these agreements to mine, for instance, are taking place.
No, they are there. The community has a place to sign. You can't mine in a place without the consent of the village head, without the consent of the landlord, without the consent of the traditional ruler, without the consent of the local government chairman. So all these people, they are involved in the chain of this transaction. And like I said, they don't know all these things we're talking about. So it's our duty as government, I take that responsibility, to educate our people on what we should be talking about.
Okay.
And that is why I mentioned the council chairman, I mentioned traditional rulers. Yes. And these are one of the roles we are going to put as the cardinal roles of traditional rulers, as we want to recognize them constitutionally.
All right.
Yes.
DG, the Raw Material Research and Development Council, even before this bill has been on ground and you've been achieving some things. The one worry amongst people is research findings. How accessible are industry players to research findings? There are a lot of research institutions. You want to talk to us about how accessible your findings are?
Very accessible. The Raw Material Research and Development Council, we collaborate very, 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 very closely with research institutions, other research institutions, like the tertiary institutions. In fact, most of the work we do, most of the innovation that we conduct are based on researches that's been done in the universities. And what we now do is to take them from blue sky research to industrial useful research in most instances, and see how those can be adapted or how they can be reconfirmed to serve industries. So that relationship has been there. In fact, at the last count, we are, up to last week, we're evaluating about 396 research proposals across different countries. And then on the 19th of this month, today is 14th, on the 19th of this month, we're meeting with representatives of different universities in Nigeria on the commercialization of research findings. Okay. So we work very closely with them. The challenge we have is that we do not have enough resources to fund most of the researches that we find useful for industries. So we fund only a very small proportion of these. And in fact, even recently it's becoming increasingly more difficult. But that is basically what it is. We cooperate, we have, what we call the triple helix. We work very closely with research institutions and the industries. So we work with industries to find out what their needs are. And we communicate these needs to researchers in tertiary institutions and also researchers within our own ecosystem. And they come up with proposals. These proposals are also based on certain templates that ensure they are useful to industries. So that's basically ongoing.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about the Raw Material Processing and Local Production Protection Act, but implementation seems to be a problem. What exactly do you think is wrong in this regard? And do we need to amend the law, or there's a need for holistic overhaul of this? That's
what we're talking about here. It's the amendment that is ongoing. Yeah. You see, the thing is, you have to give teeth. It's not just having a council. The purpose of this council, really, if you ask me, from the very beginning, would have been this bill, to implement this bill. And of course, the council doesn't implement it alone. You know, the last question you asked the distinguished senator, which is about the conflicts in some areas and what they're doing. And the response, elegant, brilliant. The key thing is this money is illegal financial flows. If you do not, like the distinguished senator pointed out, if you do not make it, if you not enforce that value addition is a component, an integral component of partnerships in mining, or even the licensing of those who mine, then you're most likely going to end up with illicit financial flows. And illicit financial flows, the appetite for it triggers and sustains crisis.
Right.
So if, like the distinguished senator said, if you have if those who give license, solid minerals in this case, if they insist that before we give you a license, you must show us evidence of how you're going to add value to this, then you know where these monies are channeled to. It becomes easier to track them. But if you can't do that, then also some people come, they mine and they sell to, some groups that their interest might be how to use gun to continue to have access to it.
Okay, distinguished, let's look at this aspect. Trading with the global community as Nigeria might be very, very difficult. But if we come together as Africa, we might be able to push the frontier better. But sadly, this penetration and integration among African countries is not there. On paper, we talk about Africa is one. But in reality, a business person in Ghana has certain disadvantage. We are somebody from outside Africa who have the benefits. And how are you as a politician or National Assembly thinking of working with your counterparts across African nations to bridge this gap?
Well, right from creation, Africa is an entity created by God. It was in the course of colonization that the white people disintegrated us into so many countries, gave us names, gave us languages, gave us religion, but we are one people created by God. We're supposed to have a United States of Africa, just like they have United States of America.
Ambitious.
When we talk of America, I think that America is one country. No, America is a conglomerate of so many countries coming together to form that world power that they're enjoying today. So, and that is why we have ECOWAS. ECOWAS is trying to bring us back to understand that we are one people with common goal, from common ancestor, and we must champion our well-being collectively as a people, because the more the merrier. So, and ECOWAS today is being led by our dear president, our performing president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. From time to time, has been coming up with so many economic policies, all geared towards bringing the West African states together, so that we can transact better and operate better. In the course of our last sitting in Lagos, that was 2 months back, I came up with a bill, because we also have an ECOWAS parliament, which I'm a member. We also make laws that regulate the activities of the ECOWAS leadership. So I came up with a bill seeking to have a single digit dialing code within West Africa, meaning that if you have that single dialing code, I can from here transact business with somebody in Togo, somebody in Ghana, without being charged, very high, by this data stuff. So that is why I came up with that bill, and it was a welcome development, because when we have that, we'll do business with ease, and of course, it will integrate us the more. So we are doing something as Parliament in that direction, and this thing I've mentioned is just one out of many that we are coming up with, all geared towards bringing us together to understand that we are one people, and we cannot succeed in separate. We must succeed jointly as a people.
Well, Senator, Nigeria depends heavily on proceeds from raw materials, but very little attention is paid to environmental damage from the extraction and processing. Should we be more worried about, getting these raw materials or maintaining the land that they are extracted from?
Yeah, in the course of my responding to earlier questions, I did mention environmental impact assessment. This bill is all-encompassing. It's also going to take care of that area so that before you start mining in any community, you have to study and approve the environmental impact assessment report so that at the end of the day, we'll not just create wealth, we also safeguard the lives of people within those localities. So this bill is the second limb of it. Will also take care of that to make sure that those things are taken care of, all geared towards safeguarding the lives of the locals in the course of mining.
All right,
Okay.
Prof. Raw materials contribute approximately 10% to Nigeria's GDP, with agriculture being the largest contributor. Solid minerals, despite abundance, contribute less than 1%. What GDP projections are you having with this current bill that the Senator is proposing?
I mean, are you talking about the contribution of the solid minerals or agriculture?
The solid minerals.
Okay, well, raw material in the price today, like you said correctly, is about 10%. If we have this bill, to be honest, we'll probably be looking about maybe between 30 and 40% contribution, because everybody gets involved. Every person gets in, including you, is going to sweep across to you, because you'll be seeing processing taking place in virtually every single activity. All we have as a continent is raw material, and we haven't moved from that point. So once we begin to think 30% value addition, it will touch the life of every person. And just like you asked before, about implementation, it's not only the council. Solid minerals will be there. Ministry of Agriculture will be there. Environment will be there. In fact, Standards Organization of Nigeria will be there. Export Promotion will be there. Export Processing Promotion Council will be there. A number of other key stakeholders are going to be there, and all of them were also involved when we had sessions, the public hearing, and they all gave this bill a resounding pass. So every person is going to be a big boom for the country, and we're also making efforts to ensure that this becomes the real practical implementation of the AFTA. You know, you're talking about the intra-African market. So between the 20th and the 22nd of May, we're going to have the Africa Raw Materials Summit. And two things are standing out there. Number one is, apart from learning from each other, is essentially to deepen the intra-African market for raw materials, which is going to be the first ever true implementation or testing of the AFTA. Because here we'll be looking at issues of how we work with other countries. The problem is that manufacturers here will be going to Australia to look for raw materials that's either in Calabar or in Benin Republic, which, if you are able to access, will make it easier, will improve the competitiveness of production and make it easier even to export and to add value for export.
Okay.
We don't have that. So this African Raw Materials Summit will enable that to happen. It will bring other African players. The last count, we have 72 countries showing interest to participate in that summit.
All right, thank you. Just a quick one just before we go. The bill, how soon do you expect that it will be passed?
Well, the bill, we're almost done. I've done the first reading, I've done the second reading, I've led the debate, which all the senators gave a nod in support. We've done public hearing, like the DG said, which attracted a very resounding nod from all the stakeholders in the industry. So upon resumption, the bill will be led before the plenary for passage, which is the third reading and passage. Then thereafter, we expect that Mr. President, who is a man that thinks outside the box, will assent to this bill.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
Well, clearly, the raw materials industry holds a lot of potentials, and it's just left for a lot of work needs to be done to turn these resources into real results. We must thank you so much for your time with us on the program, gentlemen. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, that's our package from here in Abuja. We'll be handing you over to our Lagos studio where Veronica and Ibrahim and the rest of the crew are standing by to continue with the rest of the show.
All right, thank you, Tijesu. Thank you, Oshomomo, for that insightful interview. Back in Lagos, it's time now for